They say fear doesn't always come crashing in through a door. Sometimes it just knocks. And sometimes that knock doesn't stop. For almost 4 peaceful years, I lived in that small, quiet apartment at the edge of the complex. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My little space of calm after long, exhausting days. I had learned every sound the building made. The hum of the air vent, the soft creak of the stairs, even the echo of my own footsteps. It all felt familiar, safe, predictable, until he moved in. At first, it was just another neighbor, an older man, quiet, kept to himself. I'd see him around, maybe say a polite hello in the parking lot. Nothing unusual. But then one night, I noticed something strange. Random men started showing up at his door. Late hours. Sketchy faces. They stayed only a few weeks. And then suddenly it stopped. Life went back to normal, or so I thought. About a month ago, everything shifted again. Another man moved in with him. Maybe in his early 50s. Tall, sunburned skin with that kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. From the moment I saw him, something deep in my gut whispered no. I ignored it. Told myself I was being judgmental. People deserve a chance, right? So when we crossed paths near the mailboxes, I forced a small smile and said hi. He smiled back. Too long. Too wide. Then one evening he knocked on my door. I opened it halfway and there he was, standing too close, pretending to be casual. He said something about his car, how someone might have scratched it. I nodded, offered a polite hope it gets sorted, and closed the door. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The next few days felt like déjà vu. Another knock. Then another. And another. 4 times in 2 weeks. Each time I stood frozen inside, heart pounding, watching his shadow under the door. I didn't answer. I couldn't, and that's when I realized this wasn't coincidence anymore. He had started appearing outside at strange times. Sometimes I'd open my front door and there he was, already looking up from the parking lot, pretending to check his phone. Other times I'd come home from work, step out of my car, and within seconds I'd hear footsteps behind me and his voice. Hey, you just got back? It began to feel like he knew exactly when I left and exactly when I came home. Then I saw it. A new camera mounted on his window, pointing directly toward the parking lot. At first I thought maybe it was for safety, but then the realization hit. From that angle he could see my car, my door, my every move. And suddenly my home didn't feel like home anymore. Every sound made me jump. Every creak of the hallway felt like footsteps. I started timing my errands, leaving at different hours just so I wouldn't run into him. But somehow he was always there, sometimes standing by his door pretending to smoke. Sometimes just waiting. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't violent. But it was something worse, and it was silent intrusion. A slow invasion of peace. I began to dread the sound of knocking. At night, I'd lie awake, eyes on the ceiling, replaying every little moment, asking myself, did I smile too much that first day? Did he think I was being friendly? Or is he just watching everyone? The mind starts to spiral when it doesn't feel safe. And that's exactly what fear does. It doesn't just live outside your door. It moves inside your head. For days I debated what to do. Should I confront him? Leave a note? Ask him to stop? But every time I imagined opening that door, something deep inside screamed, don't. I told a friend about it. She said maybe I was overreacting. Maybe he just needed someone to talk to. But that didn't feel right. There's a difference between loneliness and obsession, and his presence had crossed that invisible line. So I waited, watched, tried to ignore it. Until one night, it went too far. It was past 10 p.m. I was scrolling on my phone, lights dim, when I heard a faint shuffle outside my window, like shoes brushing against gravel. My heart froze. Then came the knock. Slow, deliberate. Once, pause. Twice, pause. I held my breath, watching the shadow under the door again. No one spoke. The knocking stopped. After a minute, I peeked through the peephole, and there he was, standing still, looking straight ahead, as if he knew I was watching. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. That night, sleep never came. By morning, something inside me shifted. Fear turned into anger, anger into resolve. I was done feeling trapped in my own home, but I didn't want confrontation. I wanted safety, proof, accountability. So I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my landlord. When I hit send on that email, my hands were trembling. It wasn't a long message, just a few lines asking a simple question. Do you run background checks on all tenants? I have some concerns about one living next door. But in that short message, I had poured weeks of sleepless nights and silent fear. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't use the word stalking. I just asked, calmly, carefully. For hours, I stared at my inbox, refreshing again and again. Nothing. The day dragged on painfully slow. Every sound from the hallway made me jump. Every knock from another apartment sent my pulse racing. I even considered packing an overnight bag and staying with a friend, but then evening came, and for the first time in weeks, the knocking never came. The air felt different that night, still tense but somehow lighter, like a storm had paused mid-sky. Was it just coincidence? Or had the landlord already acted? The next morning I stepped outside carefully, peering around like someone walking through a dream. The man wasn't there. His car sat in the parking lot, but he was nowhere to be seen. I felt relief, small, fragile, but real. Still, I didn't let my guard down. I left for work early, came home late, and every time I approached my door, I half expected him to appear. He didn't, not that day. Not the next, but fear doesn't vanish easily. It lingers, waiting for proof that you're safe. So I watched for signs. I studied every sound. I noticed the older neighbor, the one who'd lived there for years, seemed nervous too. He avoided eye contact. He closed his blinds more often. Something had shifted in that apartment next door. Days passed. No knocks, no sudden appearances. Just silence. And in that silence, my thoughts began to settle. I realized how deeply fear had crawled into my habits, how it had shaped my life without me even noticing. I had started tiptoeing inside my own home, whispering on phone calls, keeping the lights dim so my shadow wouldn't move across the curtains. That's what fear does. It rewrites your routine until you barely recognize yourself. But as the quiet stretched on, a new emotion began to grow inside me. Strength. I wasn't the same woman who had stood frozen behind that door, watching a stranger's shadow move across the floor. I had acted. I had spoken up. Maybe that's all karma needs sometimes, a small moment of courage to start its work. 2 days later, an email finally arrived. It was short, polite, almost too casual. Thank you for your message. I'll look into this matter. I wasn't aware of a new tenant living there. That last sentence stopped me cold. She wasn't aware? That meant the man, the one who kept knocking, the one who watched me from his camera, wasn't even supposed to be living there. He was a ghost tenant. That explained the secrecy, the strange timing, the nervous behavior of the original neighbor. I felt a surge of relief mixed with anger. Someone had let danger move in quietly, without permission, without record, and I had been the one paying the price for their carelessness. That night I locked every door, pulled my curtains tight, and waited. Would there be consequences? Would the landlord confront him? Evict him? Or worse, would he find out that I had been the one who spoke up? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I reminded myself, truth doesn't owe fear an explanation. 2 more days passed. Then 3. The parking lot camera disappeared from his window. No knocks, no sudden appearances. Just quiet. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty. It felt like the world had taken a deep breath and decided to let me rest. I began sleeping again, eating again, living again, and yet part of me still watched. Because trauma doesn't end when the noise stops, it ends when your body starts to believe you're safe again. So I stayed cautious. I checked through the peephole before opening the door. I parked in different spots, but each day that passed without him showing up, the fear inside me loosened its grip. Then one evening as I sat on the couch, the soft ping of my phone broke the silence. Another email from the landlord. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I spoke with your neighbor. The individual staying there was not on the lease. The situation has been addressed. That was all she said. No details, no explanation. Just a quiet assurance that the issue was handled. And in that moment I realized something powerful. Karma doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always arrive like thunder or vengeance. Sometimes it moves quietly through the right person at the right time, setting things back in order. For the first time in weeks, I opened my windows and let the evening air flow in. The sunset spilled orange light across my floorboards, and for once I didn't feel the urge to hide behind the curtains. The camera was gone. The hallway was calm, and the strange man's presence had vanished like he'd never been there at all. Maybe he was forced out. Maybe he left on his own. It didn't matter, because peace had finally returned, and I wasn't going to let fear take it from me again. Still, a part of me stayed alert. Not paranoid, just prepared. I decided to buy a small security camera of my own. Not because I was still scared, but because safety is never something to apologize for. That night, as I placed the package order online, I caught my reflection in the screen. Eyes tired but steady, face calm but sure I had taken back control. And that, I realized, was the first step of every victory. That uneasy quiet became its own kind of torment. Because silence when you've lived in fear isn't peace, it's suspense. A week later, my landlord called. She said she had spoken to the tenant, meaning the older man, and that he admitted someone was staying there without her permission. She didn't share details, but her voice carried a weight that told me something serious had been said. After that call, the silence made more sense. That night I stood by my window, watching the building's reflection in the dark glass. It was strange. The lights in their apartment were off. No shadows moving, no sounds, just stillness, and for the first time in weeks, I took a deep breath. But fear leaves fingerprints on the mind. Even when it's gone, it leaves a residue. I found myself checking the peephole every night before bed, locking the door 3 times. Then one night, as I was taking out the trash, I heard a door creak open behind me. My heart jumped. I turned, but it was only the older neighbor. He gave me a small nod and said, "Sorry about all that noise lately. Things should be better now." Better now. The way he said it sent a chill down my back. After that, I didn't see the other man again. Not once. His car stayed parked there for a few more days, then vanished one morning, gone without warning. The hallway felt lighter. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that he might come back, so I made a decision. I ordered a Ring camera for my door, not because I was still scared, but because I refused to ever feel helpless again. When it arrived a few days later, I installed it myself. For the first time, I was the one watching. It was almost poetic. The man who once watched me through his camera would never know. Now I was the one watching, because control after fear feels like freedom. One night, my new camera app sent me a notification. Motion detected. My stomach flipped. I opened the live feed. The hallway was dark. But there it was, a shadow moving slowly right in front of my door. My hands trembled. The figure lingered for a second, then turned toward the stairs. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the shape of a man in a hoodie carrying a bag. Then he was gone. I replayed the clip over and over, but the way he paused, right outside my door, made my skin crawl. By morning, I decided to send the video to my landlord just in case. She called me back almost immediately. Her voice was calm but serious. "That sounds a lot like the same man from before," she said. My blood ran cold. Apparently, he had come back to collect his things. But the landlord had already changed the locks. He was angry about being kicked out, and she admitted she'd had to call the police that morning. I asked what happened next. She hesitated, then sighed. "Let's just say he won't be coming around again." The police found out more about him than I ever wanted to know. I didn't ask for details. Her tone said enough. That day I realized something important. Sometimes karma works quietly in the background, taking care of the things you never could. Weeks went by. The older man still lived next door, but he kept to himself now, polite, quiet, almost embarrassed. He even apologized one day while checking his mail. "I didn't realize what kind of man he was," he said softly. "I'm sorry you went through that," I nodded. And in that moment I forgave him. After that, life returned to normal. The kind of normal that feels earned. I learned to trust my instincts again. If something felt off, I didn't ignore it. Because I'd learned the hard way that ignoring your gut can cost your safety. Months passed. The seasons changed, and one crisp morning I stepped out onto my balcony, something I hadn't done in a long time. The air was cold, fresh, and full of life. I looked down at the parking lot below. A new tenant had moved in next door, a young woman with a dog. She waved at me as she got into her car, and I smiled back. It felt full circle somehow, like a quiet reassurance that the cycle of fear had been broken. People often think karma comes like thunder, loud, instant, and obvious. But I've learned it usually comes like rain, quiet, steady, and cleansing. You don't always see it when it falls, but it washes away what doesn't belong. And every time I glance at my camera feed and see an empty hallway, I smile, because peace after fear feels louder than any knock on the door. And if you ever feel that invisible chill, that sense that something isn't right, don't second-guess it. Don't rationalize it away. Listen, act, protect yourself. If you believe in quiet karma, poetic justice, and real-life stories that remind us how powerful instincts can be, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this story, because somewhere out there, someone needs this reminder too, that peace always finds its way home.